Every year, millions of drivers experience a moment that changes their heartbeat in an instant, flashing red and blue lights in the rearview mirror. In that brief space between noticing those lights and pulling over, your mind races. Did I do something wrong? What am I required to do? What can the officer ask? What am I allowed to refuse? In that moment, confusion can turn a routine stop into something far more complicated, emotionally charged, and legally risky than it ever needed to be. What happens next can shape your record, your finances, and sometimes your freedom, all based on a handful of decisions made under pressure. So let me ask you this. Do you believe most people truly understand their rights and responsibilities during a traffic stop, or do they just guess and hope for the best? A traffic stop is one of the most common points of direct contact between citizens and law enforcement. It happens in every neighborhood, every income bracket, every political group, and every culture. It is routine, yet deeply consequential. Most stops last only a few minutes, but those minutes can define outcomes that linger for years. Understanding what police can and cannot do during a traffic stop is not about resisting authority or creating conflict. It is about knowing how the legal system works, how constitutional protections apply in real life, and how to navigate a high-stress situation calmly, respectfully, and intelligently. Imagine driving home late at night after a long shift. You're tired, your mind is already on your bed, and suddenly those lights appear behind you. You pull over, heart pounding, hands slightly shaking as you reach for your wallet. In that moment, your brain is juggling fear, uncertainty, and social conditioning. You want to comply, to be polite, to avoid trouble. At the same time, you may worry about saying the wrong thing, consenting to something you shouldn't, or misunderstanding what you're being asked. Now consider another driver, stopped in the middle of a sunny afternoon. Traffic is heavy. Cars rush past. The officer approaches calmly, and the tone feels casual. That driver may feel relaxed, confident, and cooperative. Yet the same legal principles apply in both situations, regardless of the time of day, the weather, or the tone of the interaction. The difference lies in how prepared each person is to understand and exercise their rights responsibly. When police initiate a traffic stop, they must have a legal basis to do so. This generally means they must have reasonable suspicion that a traffic law has been violated or that criminal activity may be occurring. A broken taillight, speeding, rolling through a stop sign, expired registration, or even something as simple as a partially obscured license plate can provide lawful justification. This threshold is not high, and courts give officers wide latitude in determining whether reasonable suspicion exists. Once you are stopped, the officer is allowed to approach your vehicle and ask for certain documents. In most places, this includes your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. You are required to provide these when lawfully requested. Refusing to do so can result in citations, arrest, or further legal complications. The request for documents is not optional. It is a foundational part of the traffic enforcement system. Beyond that, officers often ask questions. Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? Do you know why I stopped you? These questions are not always legally required to be answered. In general, you have the right to remain silent under the Fifth Amendment, and you cannot be compelled to provide self-incriminating statements. However, how you choose to exercise that right matters. Calm, respectful silence is very different from confrontational refusal. There is a psychological component at play here. Officers are trained to observe behavior, tone, and body language. Nervousness alone is not evidence of wrongdoing. Many people are anxious during traffic stops, but hostile or erratic behavior can escalate a situation unnecessarily. The goal is not to outsmart or challenge law enforcement. The goal is to navigate the encounter safely, legally, and with minimal friction. Consider two drivers pulled over for the same minor speeding violation. One immediately becomes defensive, arguing, interrupting, refusing to cooperate beyond the bare minimum. The other remains calm, provides documentation, and answers basic questions politely, without volunteering unnecessary details. Both may receive a citation, but the second driver is far more likely to experience a smoother interaction. Not because they surrendered their rights, but because they exercised them intelligently. One of the most misunderstood aspects of traffic stops involves searches. Many people believe police cannot search their car without a warrant. In reality, vehicle searches operate under a different legal framework than home searches. Courts recognize that vehicles are mobile, public, and regulated, which creates exceptions to the warrant requirement. If an officer has probable cause to believe that evidence of a crime is present in your vehicle, they may conduct a search without a warrant. Probable cause could arise from the smell of illegal substances, visible contraband, credible tips, or admissions made by the driver. In some jurisdictions, even the odor of marijuana, where it remains illegal, can establish probable cause. However, laws are changing rapidly, and what constitutes probable cause varies significantly by location. Another common scenario involves consent searches. Officers may ask, "Do you mind if I take a look inside your vehicle?" This phrasing is intentional. If you consent, you are granting legal permission for a search, and anything found may be used as evidence. You generally have the right to decline consent. Declining politely is lawful and does not imply guilt. However, refusal may not prevent a search if probable cause exists independently. The key is clarity. A calm statement such as, "I do not consent to any searches," delivered respectfully, is sufficient. There is no need to argue or explain. Exercising this right does not require hostility. It requires composure. Another critical aspect of traffic stops involves detentions. A traffic stop is considered a temporary detention, not a full arrest. This means the officer can hold you for the time reasonably necessary to address the purpose of the stop. This includes checking your documents, running your information through databases, and issuing warnings or citations. However, the detention cannot be unnecessarily prolonged without additional legal justification. Courts have ruled that extending a stop beyond its original purpose requires independent, reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. For example, an officer cannot routinely delay a stop for a canine unit without specific reasons suggesting illegal conduct. That said, what qualifies as reasonable suspicion is often debated in courtrooms. Nervous behavior, inconsistent answers, visible items, and certain travel patterns may be cited. This creates a legal gray area where outcomes can depend on subtle factors and later judicial interpretation. Now consider a situation involving a legally owned firearm. In many jurisdictions, lawful gun ownership is protected by the Second Amendment, but regulations regarding carrying, transport, and disclosure vary widely. Some states require immediate disclosure to law enforcement if you are carrying a concealed weapon. Others do not. Some allow open carry without permits. Others impose strict licensing requirements. If you are a lawful gun owner, understanding your local laws is essential. During a traffic stop, if required by law, you must inform the officer that you are armed. Even when not required, some choose to disclose voluntarily as a courtesy. There is no universal rule. What matters is compliance with local statutes and maintaining a calm, non-threatening demeanor. In any scenario involving firearms, safety protocols are paramount. Officers are trained to prioritize safety, and sudden movements or unclear actions can create dangerous misunderstandings. Keeping your hands visible, following instructions carefully, and communicating clearly are critical. One of the most common mistakes people make during traffic stops is oversharing. In an attempt to appear cooperative, drivers sometimes volunteer unnecessary information that may inadvertently create legal complications. Casual admissions like, "I was only speeding a little," or "I had a couple of drinks hours ago," can escalate a routine stop into a more serious investigation. This is where the Fifth Amendment plays a quiet but powerful role. You are not obligated to incriminate yourself. Exercising this right does not mean being uncooperative. It means choosing your words carefully. Simple, respectful responses and minimal disclosure protect your legal position while maintaining civility. Stress plays a significant role here. Under pressure, people often talk more than necessary. The human brain seeks social connection and reassurance. In a traffic stop, this instinct can work against you. Remaining calm, breathing slowly, and answering only what is required helps keep the situation grounded. Now let's examine two contrasting scenarios that illustrate how outcomes can diverge. In the first, a driver is stopped for a broken headlight. The officer approaches and asks for license and registration. The driver provides them promptly. When asked if they know why they were stopped, the driver replies politely, "I'm not sure, officer." The officer explains the broken headlight. The driver acknowledges and says they will have it fixed. When asked if there is anything illegal in the car, the driver calmly says, "I do not consent to any searches." The officer checks the documents, issues a warning, and the stop ends within minutes. In the second scenario, the same violation occurs. The driver becomes defensive, arguing about the headlight, raising their voice, accusing the officer of harassment. When asked about illegal items, the driver responds sarcastically. The tension rises. The officer becomes more suspicious. The stop extends. Additional questions follow. The encounter becomes stressful, prolonged, and potentially costly. Neither driver broke a serious law, but the emotional trajectory of the interaction led to vastly different experiences. The difference was not submission versus resistance. It was composure versus confrontation. Understanding your rights is not about asserting dominance. It is about navigating power dynamics intelligently. Law enforcement officers operate within a structured legal framework, but they also respond to human behavior. Calm, respectful interactions reduce friction. Clear knowledge reduces fear. Another area of confusion involves sobriety checkpoints and DUI investigations. Laws governing checkpoints vary widely. Some states permit them, others restrict or prohibit them. During a DUI stop, officers may request field sobriety tests or breath samples. Participation requirements vary by jurisdiction. In many places, refusing a breath test can result in automatic license suspension under implied consent laws, even if no charges are ultimately filed. These laws exist because driving is considered a regulated privilege, not an absolute right. By operating a motor vehicle, drivers agree to certain conditions, including compliance with testing under specific circumstances. Understanding these rules before you ever encounter them is crucial. Again, this is not about avoiding accountability. It is about understanding the system you are participating in. A well-informed driver makes better decisions under pressure. There is also the matter of passengers. Passengers generally are not required to provide identification unless there is reasonable suspicion they are involved in a crime. However, laws vary, and some jurisdictions have stop and identify statutes. Even where not required, passengers may choose to provide ID voluntarily. Each decision carries legal and social implications. For passengers, remaining calm, keeping hands visible, and following lawful instructions helps maintain safety. Sudden movements, arguments, or interference can escalate the encounter for everyone involved. At the heart of all these rules lies the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. This amendment shapes nearly every aspect of traffic stops. But what is considered reasonable often depends on circumstances, context, and judicial interpretation. Courts constantly balance public safety against individual liberty. This tension is foundational to constitutional law. Traffic stops exist at the intersection of these competing interests. They are necessary for enforcing traffic safety laws, yet they also involve significant government intrusion into private life. That is why procedural safeguards matter. Time limits on detentions, standards for probable cause, consent requirements, and disclosure rules all serve to prevent abuse while allowing law enforcement to perform their duties. When people lack understanding of these safeguards, fear and misinformation fill the gap. Some assume police can do anything they want. Others believe any request can be refused. Both extremes are inaccurate. The truth exists in careful legal nuance. Education is the antidote to fear. Knowing what police can and cannot do empowers you to act rationally. It transforms a stressful encounter into a manageable one. Let's consider a scenario involving a minor accident. You are stopped at a light when another vehicle lightly bumps your rear bumper. There is no visible damage. Police arrive. They ask for statements. In this emotionally charged moment, people often apologize automatically. "I'm so sorry. I should have braked sooner." These words, spoken reflexively, can later be interpreted as admissions of fault, affecting insurance claims and legal liability. Understanding your right to provide factual, limited statements without speculation protects you. Calmly describing what you observed, without assigning blame or making assumptions, allows the legal and insurance systems to do their work objectively. This is another example of how constitutional protections intersect with everyday life. The Fifth Amendment does not exist only for dramatic courtroom scenes. It operates quietly in routine interactions, shaping outcomes in subtle ways. Now, think about cultural perceptions of police encounters. Media portrayals often emphasize extremes, dramatic confrontations, viral videos, moments of conflict. These stories shape public expectations. But most traffic stops are uneventful. They involve paperwork, brief conversations, and routine procedures. Yet because high-conflict cases receive the most attention, they distort public perception. This can heighten anxiety for drivers and officers alike. When people expect conflict, they may unconsciously create it. Changing that dynamic begins with education. When drivers understand their rights and responsibilities, they approach stops with confidence instead of fear. when officers encounter calm, informed citizens. Interactions tend to remain professional and controlled. This mutual predictability fosters safety. None of this means surrendering your constitutional protections. It means exercising them thoughtfully, knowing when to speak, when to remain silent, when to comply, and when to decline consent allows you to move through encounters without unnecessary risk. The legal system is complex, but its foundations are accessible. The Fourth Amendment guards your privacy. The Fifth protects your silence. The Second, where applicable, recognizes lawful gun ownership. Together, they create a framework that balances liberty and security. But these rights are not automatic shields. They require understanding, discipline, and situational awareness. As laws evolve, especially around technology, surveillance, and vehicle data, traffic stops may change in ways we are only beginning to understand. License plate readers, automated enforcement systems, and digital databases are reshaping how police conduct stops. These developments raise new legal questions and new privacy concerns. Staying informed is not a one-time effort. It is an ongoing process. Laws vary by state and change over time. What is lawful today may shift tomorrow. Responsible citizenship includes staying educated about the legal environment you operate within. At the end of the day, a traffic stop is a brief intersection between individual liberty and public authority. How that moment unfolds depends as much on your preparation as on the officer's conduct. Calm awareness transforms fear into clarity. The core message is simple. Know your rights, understand your responsibilities, remain calm, and act lawfully. These principles protect not only you, but everyone sharing the road. If this exploration has made you think differently about those flashing lights in your mirror, consider subscribing so you can stay informed, grounded, and prepared. Because in the real world, knowledge is not just power, it is peace of mind. And the next time those lights appear behind you, may your heartbeat stay steady, your mind stay clear, and your choices reflect wisdom rather than fear.